We have been through too much over the last 4 years. I'm standing right now in a country that I barely recognize.
You stupid.
Living under minority rule by a Republican Party that has sat idly by while their leader locked kids in cages and separated families.
Bullshit.
Not one single so-called cage has been constructed by the Trump administration. Not one.
Kids in cages.
Kids in cages.
Kids in cages.
Kids in cages. Kids in cages.
Kids in cages.
Children in cages.
On the issue of migrant children.
Reunite migrant children. Migrant children.
Of migrant families.
Migrant children.
Migrant children.
Migrant families. Migrant children.
Migrant children.
Migrant children.
Migrant children.
The Biden team holds unaccompanied migrant children in Border Patrol custody longer than legally allowed, all in the very same cages.
The hypocrisy from the left and the mainstream media truly shows they care nothing for the children they used as pawns to attack President Trump.
All you hear is this, well, President Trump is putting kids in cages, and that became the narrative. The cage is built by President Obama. But I like to say that, what Biden has done is we're building warehouses.
Right.
We're putting children in warehouses, like going to an Amazon or a Walmart warehouse where children are being placed.
Of understandably horrible photos from the Obama administration. Where was the calls for violence and outrage from the left? This is the, again, Obama administration. This has been wrapping people in foil blankets behind cages, more foil blankets, more kids in detention. This is, again, the Obama administration.
Families in the United States of America. While he equated neo-Nazis with peaceful protesters.
Bullshit.
The Fine People hoax has been debunked by everybody, including even, yes, CNN. There are transcripts and there are videos that show that Trump, when he said both sides, he was talking about the debates regarding the monument, not Nazis or Antifa. It's obvious.
The Charlottesville incident really spoke to the character of President Trump. He said that there was blame to go along on both sides, when clearly we had white nationalists, white supremacists who caused the death of a person.
Shavar just reiterated what Biden said, that the president called white supremacists fine people. Is that what really happened?
That's exactly not what happened. And you can go and you can look up the full speech of what Trump said. He specifically said, I am not speaking about white supremacists or Nazis. So this is not a legitimate issue at all.
So you can say what you want, but that's the way it is.
What I'm saying is, if at Charlottesville, if he explicitly condemned racists and white supremacists, we would agree that's a good thing. Now, the president should do that.
His first reaction should have been that. His first reaction was good people on both sides. But you also had people that were very fine people on both sides. His first reaction was good people on both sides.
In the very same paragraph,
good people on both sides is not condemning racism. There were no good people marching saying Jews will not replace us. Not one good person. Not one of those people was a good person. Not one of them. Not one.
Now, if you read down two paragraphs, as he is saying that,
he still said there were good people on both sides. And you had people, and I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists, because they should be condemned totally.
Now, if you read down two paragraphs, as he is saying that.
While he equated neo-Nazis with peaceful protesters.
And I'm not talking about the neo-Nazis and the white nationalists.
Because they should be condemned totally.
And how many times have you heard that President Trump has never denounced white supremacists? Now you in America know the truth.
While he fomented hate against Mexicans and Muslims. I
love the Muslims. I think they're great people. I love Mexican people. I'm leading in every poll with the Hispanics. They love me. I love them.
While he fomented hate against Mexicans and Muslims.
I love you. Who's the next president? He's a Muslim and he's for Trump. You see? I'm a Muslim for him. He's a Muslim. All the way to the White House. All the way. I'm a Muslim. I support this man to the death with my life. Would I consider putting a Muslim American in my cabinet? Absolutely no problem with that.
While he fomented hate against Mexicans and Muslims, while he abandoned Americans in Puerto Rico after a hurricane because there was no electoral benefit for him.
President Donald Trump approved a state of emergency declaration for Puerto Rico on Tuesday.
President Trump has officially signed a declaration of disaster for Puerto Rico. In a tweet, the island's governor thanked the president for his commitment to helping Puerto Rico.
He abandoned Americans in Puerto Rico after a hurricane because there was no electoral benefit for him.
Today, my administration's making the largest emergency relief award in history to rebuild Puerto Rico's electrical grid and educational system. We're awarding $13 billion to permanently repair and replace thousands of miles of transmission and distribution lines that should have been done many years ago.
While he told minority women serving in the United States Congress to go back to where they came from.
Why don't they go back and help fix the totally broken and crime-infested places from which they came, then come back and show us how it's done? And also, these tweets do not make them a racist. Ilhan Omar, she's not from here. She should go back to Somalia because she despises America. She despises America, but she takes advantage of everything that makes our country wonderful and beautiful, and then she hates on it.
If you're not happy here, then you can leave. As far as I'm concerned, if you hate our country, if you're not happy here, you can leave. And that's what I say all the time. That's what I said in a tweet, which I guess some people think is controversial. A lot of people love it, by the way.
Okay, so it's not racist. It's not. It has nothing to do with race. It has everything to do with allegiance, to values, to principles.
While he expelled trans Americans from our own military. While he coddled dictators and authoritarians like Kim Jong-un and Putin and Erdogan and Mohammed bin Salman, and yet alienated our friends and allies. While he expelled trans Americans from our own military.
Here's what the White House said the policy will do in a statement last night. Transgender persons with a history of diagnosis of gender dysphoria, individuals who the policy state may require substantial medical treatment, including medications and surgery, are disqualified from military service except under certain limited circumstances.
While he expelled trans Americans from our own military.
Policy rescinds the Obama-era rule change that allowed transgender service members to serve, but it also allows people who are currently active in the military, most of them, to continue serving.
Effective immediately, the rule against recruiting transgender individuals has been renewed. The military will no longer pay for sex reassignment surgery.
Breaking news on another front, the Supreme Court allowing the Trump administration's ban to restrict transgender men and women from serving in the military to go into effect.
While he coddled dictators and authoritarians like Kim Jong-un and Putin and Erdogan and Mohammed bin Salman, and yet alienated our friends and allies.
President Trump is nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize for the third time this year, specifically referring to something called the Trump doctrine.
What he has done with the Trump doctrine is that he has decided that he would no longer have America involved in endless wars.
Goes hand in hand with the president's historic peace deal negotiations between Israel and the UAE. A move President Trump made despite expert advice warning against the ambitious goal of seeking peace in the Middle East.
While he tried and continues to try to take health care away from millions upon millions of Americans.
To try to take health care away from millions upon millions of Americans.
Bullshit! When I was elected, I inherited a thing called Obamacare. Premiums were too high. Deductibles were a disaster. You couldn't keep your doctor, but by far the worst part of Obamacare was this thing called the individual mandate. It made you pay a tremendous amount of money in order to not have to pay for health insurance. Think of that. You had to pay a fortune in order not to have health insurance.
While he undermined confidence in a free press and tear-gassed Americans for exercising their First Amendment right to protest. Tear-gassed Americans for exercising their First Amendment right to protest.
Bullshit!
Liberal media and Democrats caught pushing a false narrative yet again. Surprise, surprise. After an Inspector General report debunks claims that then-President Trump ordered protesters to be cleared from Lafayette Park outside the White House last summer, but at the time, major news outlets were in a fury, saying President Trump actually ordered the tear gassing of protesters.
But this new report says that that action was taken so that a fence could be built and that there is no evidence that the police acted to make room for the president's photo op.
But this is about the narrative.
You had a president they wanted you to think was evil, that hated you, that was paranoid, that was willing to attack American citizens for a photo op. It was all a lie, but this is what we know about this media. They were willing to lie, tell any lie to get Donald Trump out of the White House.
But after this report came out yesterday, there was a statement from Donald Trump thanking the Inspector General and saying that his findings totally exonerated him from the decision to clear the protesters.
While he threatened to jail his political opponents, while he pilfered American taxpayers to line his and his family's pockets.
Donald Trump told voters in 2016 that he was so wealthy he didn't need their money if he became president.
The first thing I'm going to do is tell you that if I'm elected president, I'm accepting no salary, okay? That's not a big deal for me.
But on this promise, Trump kept his word. So we rate it promise kept.
While he hid the dangers of a pandemic and allowed it to ravage this country, killing nearly 250,000 Americans.
Killing nearly 250,000 Americans.
Bullshit!
Hey pal, you just blowing from stupid town?
Let's just get one thing clear. There's been more deaths from this pandemic under President Biden than under President Trump. And remember, President Trump is the one that put forth Operation Warp Speed with our pharmaceutical industry to get a vaccine to market incredibly quick. In fact, record-breaking time. So again, more deaths under President Biden than President Trump. So who is really ignoring the pandemic?
While he has lied endlessly and shamelessly for the express purpose of helping himself and his political future.
But first, we start with another blatant lie from the ever-forgetful Joe Biden. He claims he sounded the alarm early on.
We warned him about, as early as January, the middle of January, I was saying the pandemic is coming.
Okay, Joe's lying.
He is a pathological, shameless liar.
No, he's a liar. He lies about everything.
In late January, just days before, the president issued what was the unprecedented China travel ban and first quarantine in 50 years, 10 days after the first identified case in this country. Then on February 1st, that's the day that Biden, day after the travel ban was implemented, after 10 days, the first identified case of corona, well, Joe himself tweeted out that the travel ban was hysterical, xenophobia, and fear-mongering.
Biden can't lie his way out of this one. That's the reality.
Joe Biden is living an alternative reality.
Joe Biden may not have been your first choice, but he's the only candidate running who believes in what this country is supposed to represent.
According to a new report, President Biden farted while speaking with Britain's Duchess Camilla Parker Bowles.
He believes in science, and he'll defer to it to get this virus under control.
You want to compare the results since he's been president to Trump? Who do you think has had more people die of COVID? It's Biden, and it's not slowing down.
He recognizes that the best way to stimulate the economy isn't by kowtowing to fossil fuels, it's investing in renewables, which is the fastest growing sector in this country.
High gas prices are now reaching record levels, and they're climbing higher every day. In the past week, the average price across our area increased by 50 cents a gallon. That's because the price of oil has hit record highs. At one point this morning, a barrel of oil was more than $130, and that's the highest since 2008.
This morning, new inflation numbers confirming the struggle facing millions of Americans. Fuel, food, and shelter, the biggest drivers behind inflation's highest increase in 4 decades.
Because despite what Donald Trump says, no, this is not a 10 out of 10. It's a disaster unlike anything we've experienced in our lifetimes. Joe Biden understands that.
Approximately 14 million Americans, 14 million, have fallen behind on rent, and many risk eviction. There's nothing we can do to change the trajectory of the pandemic in the next several months.
Joe Biden understands that. And look, he isn't perfect and he doesn't claim to be, but he's a decent man who cares about helping people, and that's what being president is about.
During the recent UN climate summit in Scotland, President Biden reportedly let out a, quote, long, loud fart in front of Britain's Duchess Camilla Parker Bowles. Now, that is a real thing that really happened.
And look, he isn't perfect and he doesn't claim to be, but he's a decent man who cares about helping people, and that's what being president is about.
I have never discussed with my son or my brother or anyone else anything having to do with their businesses, period. I did anything wrong, and I didn't realize he was on the board till after he'd been on the board, and at the same time, he has come forward and said it was a mistake on his part to be on the board.
Our democracy isn't a guarantee. If we don't nurture it, if we don't protect it, if we don't fight for it, we'll lose it. Vote so that we don't.
surrendering Bagram and pulling out military assets before we had gotten every American citizen out of the country will go down as one of the worst foreign policy mistakes in the history of United States foreign policy. And so this president, to add insult to injury, has been lying to the American people for 2 weeks. He said Al-Qaeda has been decimated in Afghanistan. Not true. He said our allies didn't have concerns with the way in which this has been conducted. Not true. He said Americans weren't having trouble getting to the airport. Well, obviously, we just left hundreds, if not thousands of them behind. So that was a massive lie.
Joe Biden may not have been your first choice, but he's the only candidate running who believes in what this country is supposed to represent. And look, he isn't perfect and he doesn't claim to be, but he's a decent man who cares about helping people, and that's what being president is about, leaving the country a better place than when you found it.
Joe Biden is an illegitimate president.